Good afternoon. Unfortunately, I found a cartoon this morning in the Judges Association book that I think sort of speaks to what we're dealing with here at this conference on a daily basis. And it's a picture of a Trojan horse with the words realignment across in front of it. In front of it are two law enforcement officers, and the caption is, "He keeps kicking down the doors to the county jail. Tell me again who sent this." So it's just, realignment is upon us, and we've had to come up with some effective strategies to deal with it. Every Monday afternoon in my court, we have the High Violent Offender Court. The people who are chosen for that court are first initially screened by the probation department using a strong risk assessment tool. 98% of them are high risk for recommitting a violent offense. They've also been non-compliant with the supervision in the high violent crimes unit with probation. So they are then referred to the High Violent Offenders Court, and they are assessed by our case manager for suitability. And we developed then an individual offender plan, and these are fluid plans that change from week to week. And sometimes these people, we see them from week to week. Our typical time is that we see them every 2 weeks. We have two different groups. We have one group that are primarily high violence offenders, and then we have others that are high violence with substance abuse issues that are moderate or mild. And so we try not to mix them up. The studies indicate that if you put a low offender with a high offender, the low offender gets pulled up rather than the high offender gets pulled down. So we try to keep them separate. We have a meeting. The case manager puts together an initial program. He identifies the stressors and the obligations that they have, and there are a number of things in the program that we require that they do. First of which is they meet with the case manager every week. Second thing is they meet with their probation officer every week. The third thing is they meet weekly with some outside service providers. Some of them go to domestic violence programs. Others go, if some of them who have the substance abuse problems, go to a outside provider. But they meet with an outside source every week. And the fourth thing that we try to do as soon as we get them stabilized is cognitive behavior training from probation. And I'm a huge believer in this. To me, it is the ultimate thing that we give them to deal with identifying the stressors in their lives and then giving them some strategies in dealing with those. And it's not always an easy thing. They butt heads with me quite often. So they identify these various criminogenic needs and protective factors with this strategy. As I indicated, it changes every week. When we meet at the court, we meet before the hearings in the afternoon, and present at that are, I'm there, the case manager there, our clerk is there, the court clerk. This program is run outside our regular Superior Court program, so that my normal clerk does not clerk this, the one from our collaborative courts does. The interesting thing about her is not only does she clerk my court, but she also acts as the receptionist downstairs when they come in to see the case manager or come in to do their tests. We do a lot of testing too, as you might expect. They're tested quite often. And sometimes, if they look least bit shaky at the hearing, we send them right down for a test. So she picks up on the cues that they give her. So again, we're trying to identify stressors in their lives and make immediate action on them. They get ordered to court-ordered programs, of course, the domestic violence programs, substance abuse, and that can be either residential or that can be outpatient. We try to deal with outpatient if we can, but some of them, if they're spinning out of control, we put them immediately into a residential treatment program. And in our situation, we had to go back to our CCP and ask for additional funds because we saw that we had people with more substance abuse issues than we initially considered. We try to give them education in the GED program. We have our WorkNet program that we refer them to. We have the cognitive behavior interventions, MRT, moral recognition therapy, and also Thinking for Change are two programs I'm familiar with from working with our probation staff as well as going to conferences, and I really am in favor of them, and I really push our clients to do that. They get one-on-one counseling with the case manager, who then has the ability to offer changes to them if it's a problem. And the greatest thing that we have that came along with my court was the CCP task force. And Chief Holmes is going to talk about that, but my program couldn't be effective without the task force, and we can talk about that later. So our team meets prior to court, we review their progress and their problems, and they come in to court. I like everyone to be there. When we refer them to a program, most substance abuse programs have a 30-day blackout. Am I running over time? A 30-day blackout, but so they miss the first meeting, but the second meeting they're there, and I like them to be there all the time. We review their progress, we deal with their problems. When they first come into our court, quite often they're homeless, and we've developed a program where we can get them temporary housing for up to 45 days. What that allows for is to get the treatment team to really get a good assessment of this person, allows them to try to get stabilized and reassess their lives, and quite often, if they can show 45 days of reasonable behavior, the family or the friends that they have burned all the bridges for will oftentimes come back and allow them to live in the home. Again, we want them in a structured settlement so where their living conditions are stable rather than living on the street from night to night. Incentives and sanctions, and when I first came into this, I was pretty old school about incentives and sanctions. Why should we give them anything for doing what they're supposed to be doing? I do what I'm supposed to do, other people do it as well. And I've learned, and I've come 180 degrees from that. And sanctions and incentives can be, a sanction can be me yelling at them in court, not yelling, but me scolding them in court and getting on them about what they're doing and how they're doing. And an incentive can be as simple as praising them out to everyone. Sanctions run from being remanded into custody, and that can be in two situations. The probation officer can flash them, or if they're a community supervision person, they can be remanded by me for a violation of probation. So it happens that way. And every week I have about 20 people on my caseload per week. It seems like we have about one person remanded and one or two people get incentives. And my favorite incentive, besides praising them or encouraging them to do things, is a $5 dollar store card. And I'll tell you something that happened 2 weeks ago that was just pretty amazing. We have these two guys that had just gotten out of prison. They are just hardcore drug users. And for some reason, they got into a very good program we have that's a live-in program, and they've turned it around. They've been in it about 6 weeks. And they've been doing so well. So they came into court. I always asked their provider how they do it. She says, these guys are doing incredibly well. They've turned the corner, I think. They're leading groups. They're doing well. And we looked at each other and we said, these guys need an incentive. So there's also attorneys there present. So when their attorneys told them they're going to get incentives, they came into court. They each got their incentives. They were high-fiving like they'd won the lotto. I mean, it was amazing what these little incentives can do. So I've learned that by praising, by encouraging, and the thing that I encourage these people to do is this is the greatest effort we've ever had towards having resources available to them. I try not to make it that I am forcing them and ordering them to do these things, although I am. I'm encouraging them to take advantage of the resources. And I tell them, you know, we have to gain their trust that the case manager is there for them, the probation officer is there for them, and the task force members are there for them because they see them all the time. They've become pretty good friends with some of the officers on the task force. So they're there. If they have a problem, address it immediately rather than waiting until they spin out of control. And I think I'm probably over time.
Okay, we'll turn it over to Chief Helms, who's going to talk a little bit more about the CCP task force that you've been hearing about.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chief James mentioned something that I had to take a note of before I spoke, and I think it's very important, and I'm glad she did. And she said that public safety is #1 in our community. That's very important, and I just want to take note of that, and I want to mention it because in our county, and she mentioned that Stockton is our county seat, and I'm sure you've all seen the city of Stockton in the news. Public safety is the most important thing we need to be concerned about, in my view. Recidivism is important, but public safety is #1. So and the reason I say that is because I seriously believe that that's much of the reason that we have such a strong relationship in our county with our among our CCP. The other thing that's important to recognize is that these are relationships that existed long before realignment came along. We've always gotten along well together. We've always worked well together, and we've shared information together. We've been successful together. And the good thing about realignment for us, or one of the many good things about it for us, is that it's made those relationships stronger. So I just shout out to Chief James for that. Realignment couldn't have hit us at a worse time. We're in a position in our county when realignment hit us, just like many of you. The economy was going sideways, and municipal governments were hurting badly. We saw police staffing reductions as much as 30%. 30% fewer law enforcement officers working. And then all of a sudden realignment hits us, and we have this whole different set of challenges to deal with. So being the one police chief member, the one representative of police departments and city government on our CCP, and going to the group and asking for almost $750,000 to fund police officers for a task force, I got to tell you, it was a hard sell at first. But we put it together, we made it work, and the proposal got approved, and we got off and running. So the task force started out with one sergeant who's a member of the Stockton Police Department. Actually, he's here today. Sergeant Sean Johansson is in the back. I want to give a shout out to him. And then 3 police officers, one from Lodi, one from Manteca, one from Tracy. Chief James also threw a probation officer in that's not part of this funding but is supported by realignment funding. And the other 2 members of the task force that are here are Nestor Mejia and Rich Hohentanner, and they're doing a great job. So we got this thing up and running with the 4 cops and the 1 probation officer, and then we got some additional funding that came along our way, and I'll call that phase 2. That's the Prop 30 money, the money that was negotiated through California Police Chiefs Association with the Governor's Office and the Finance Department. And as a result of that, we're going to be adding, we've already added some of these people, an extra police officer from Stockton, a deputy sheriff to help deal with the unincorporated areas and our contract cities, a crime analyst, which is going to be very important to the work we're doing, as well as some training and a nice, healthy reserve fund. And we wanted to use that money as was intended, to work regionally and collaboratively with our partners. So what are the mission and goals? It's pretty straightforward. We made a commitment, the law enforcement executives in our county made a commitment to support realignment. We wanted to work on reducing crime that was especially those crimes caused by AB 109 offenders, working in partnership with the CCP, and really trying to maintain the quality of life in our communities. Compliance checks and searches that's just such a basic staple of what a task force is all about. It's very important to what this effort is. And you've heard about fugitives and bench warrants. We had a huge issue in our county, we still do, with people who don't show up for court, they don't report to their supervisors, and a warrant ends up getting issues. And the task force has been able to move on with that and deal with that stuff very quickly. Finally, referrals to service providers, and we wanted to be regional and flexible. We're working very closely with the Violent Crimes Unit and the Violent Crimes Court. Judge Johnson has a direct connection to the task force. If he wants an offender who's being a problem, needs to be picked up, the task force goes and gets that person. It's been very effective. The other thing, too, I want to emphasize this is not just a hook and book type of structure. When we set this up, we told these police officers that, use discretion. You don't have to throw everybody in jail. Some people definitely need to be there, but sometimes it's a good idea to give somebody a break. Sometimes it's a good idea to refer somebody to a service provider. And they've responded well to that. They've made this thing their own entity, and they're doing that. And we have success stories both on the violent end of being able to apprehend people who desperately need to be in jail or desperately need to be back in prison, and then the ones that are actually trying to make changes. And it's encouraging to see that our task force is supporting that. Results, the numbers are up on the screen if you'd like to see them. This is actually an error. This is not for the first, for year to date. This is actually just for the third quarter from July through September. But they're doing very well. They're making a difference. And again, it's that collaboration and working partnership with other people in our field. I'll turn it back over to you, Chief.
So as you've heard, the CCP task force is a very important part of the successes that we're having with the high violent offender court. So to give you an idea of what the clientele is that we're serving in that court, the court wasn't started until January of this year, so it hasn't been in existence for a very long period of time, but we've been able to serve 40 clients since that time. The average age has been 39, and 90% of them have been male. Almost 60% of these clients do not have any high school diplomas, and 73% of them are unemployed. So these are similar to many of the makeups of the clients that you're serving as well. 90% of the clients in the high violent offender court have substance abuse issues, 43% have mental health issues, and of those, 97.5% have been referred to a treatment program. Now, our recidivism information is pretty preliminary, and we're cautiously optimistic about the results that we're seeing so far. But for these high-risk violent offenders, we have only had 2 that have actually been revoked back to the county jail. We have had 8 that have committed new arrests, which is about 20%, and we've only had 1 conviction. This is a breakdown of the different arrest information, and there were 2 batteries of those 8. It was two clients were arrested for battery on a spouse, and the 1 conviction was actually for reckless driving. So right now we're pretty encouraged about these results because, again, if you remember, these are all offenders who are at high risk for committing a violent offense. So in closing, I just really want to acknowledge our county team. We have 43 people from San Joaquin County in attendance here at today's realignment conference. So I think that shows everyone here the commitment and the dedication that we all have towards making realignment work and doing our best to protect the public and reduce recidivism. We really are a model for true collaboration, and we all make a really concerted effort to do the right thing and to look at the big picture. And we're all working together towards improving public safety. So with that, I'll turn it over to some closing remarks to Judge Johnson.
All right, you heard the task force being described, and they are invaluable. Anytime a single person misses a court appearance for me, I immediately have the probation officer call them and get in touch with them. Typically, they're brought in, they're not arrested. Typically, they're brought in to either the case manager or to probation or whatever, and sometimes they do what they do. They talk them down, they find out what's going on, they report back. And they've been such an incredible tool for the court. We haven't had anybody really spin out of control such that they go do a violent crime again or do awful things. It's a struggle. It's an up and down. It's a fluid situation. But between the wonderful programs that we have going and probation being a strong unit and task force being strong, I think we're making some progress with these people, and only time will tell whether it's something that's going to maintain or whether it's just fleeting at this point. But to me, it's very encouraging, the results we're getting now.